There was an interesting study done on confidence, and the researchers who did this study were trying to find one thing, but they found something completely different, which is pretty rare. Because most of the time when people do studies, they're purposely looking to validate what they think they already know. And when the study looks like it's going to go in the opposite direction, they stop the study because it doesn't help them. But in this study, they went to completion. And what they were trying to prove was that congruent confidence is much better than fake confidence. And so they trained a bunch of people to be congruently confident in their skills and their abilities. Then they trained a bunch of people to be absolutely fakely confident in their skills and their abilities. They were over the top, outgoingly charismatic in a very fake way. And they were hoping to prove that the congruent confident people were more effective than the fakely confident people. And they sent both groups onto job interviews. But these people got hired at a much higher rate than these people, which kind of demonstrates what everybody already knows, what you already know, that you can fake it till you make it. But they also suspect that they're still missing some kind of variables, because a lot of studies have shown that being incongruent is a very negative personality trait. Being incongruent, being fake, is a very not attractive personality trait. This also explains why sales is such a high pressure, high stress, high anxiety situation. Because a lot of people believe they need to be fakely confident to overcome all the resistance in sales. It also explains why many sales jobs have such a high turnover rate, and why salespeople switch from job to job to job. They're kind of like serial daters. Serial daters are people that have problems within their personality, but they refuse to acknowledge them. So they start a relationship with somebody. The beginning of the relationship feels fantastic, but then the newness wears off, the excitement wears off, and all you're left is with the two personalities of the two people. And this person starts to have problems with the other person, so they make the incorrect assumption that it's not me, it's them. Therefore, I just need to find somebody different. If I find somebody different, then I won't have relationship problems. But they have the same problems over and over and over again, because no matter where you go, there you are. It's kind of the same with salespeople who need to push this very, very fake charisma onto their customers. It works in the beginning, but then they kind of get burned out, and they erroneously believe that it's the company, it's the industry, it's the customers. And so they think, well, if I just find a different job, everything will click, and I can live happily ever after. But it's not the job, it's them. It's the fake confidence. This is why people think they need to have fake confidence to make sales, but you don't need to have fake confidence. This is just a short-term trick. In the long term, it's much better to be congruent. I'm sure you already know this. You already understand this. In the long term, it's much better to be congruent, but at the same time, realize that you can always slowly improve your congruent self. You can always slowly improve your congruent self based on the natural feedback you get from your environment. For example, consider a fakely extroverted person versus a congruently extroverted person. The fakely extroverted person is getting all kinds of pressure, feedback, negative feedback from their sales situation. But a congruently extroverted person is acting congruently, extrovertedly in a social situation, and is getting all kinds of positive feedback. And so long as you use the positive feedback to improve yourself, you'll consistently get better. If you want to be more extroverted, you don't have to be if you don't want to, because you don't need to be extroverted to sell a lot of stuff to a lot of people. In fact, one of the easiest ways to sell things to people is to just be your congruent self and just ask them questions. Be your congruent, relaxed, introverted, introspective self and ask questions. I used to work with this guy a long, long time ago when I first got started in sales. It was at this insurance company that sold supplemental health insurance. And they had this really weird system set up. I wasn't quite sure how legal or ethical it was, but their target, their main customer, were people that were part of local unions. And so these people would get this flyer in the mail for supplemental health insurance. But because of some kind of deal the private health insurance company had with all of these unions, they kind of made it seem like this piece of advertising literature was coming from their union when it was really coming from a private company. So they kind of used their union name in the advertising to kind of almost mislead the customers into thinking this was a union approved thing when it was really just a private insurance thing. So because of that, we had a very high success rate when we would call people and try to set appointments in their homes. And so we would go in there, and when you went to sell something to somebody in their home for this company, they required that you memorize this really long pitch. It was about 3 to 5 minutes, and it had all of these sales psychology tactics built into it, and they wouldn't let you out into the field unless you could memorize this whole pitch and perform this whole pitch flawlessly. Then they would let you go out with a manager, and then once you performed sufficiently well in front of a manager performing this pitch, then you could go out by yourself and do your own thing. And the first guy they put me with, the first couple of times, he was the best salesperson on the team by far. A very young guy, much younger than me at the time. And he was just killing it every single sales presentation. But the first couple of presentations, he went through the regular pitch, the regular memorized pitch, but he wasn't doing it very enthusiastically. It was like he didn't care. In fact, the first couple of times, I thought he was stoned because his eyes were always half closed and he didn't seem to care what he was talking about. But after he realized I wasn't going to rat him out, he told me he never uses the pitch. And this is like a strict rule at the company. You always have to use the pitch. But he says, I never use the pitch. I just do my own thing. If I do my own thing, you're not going to rat me out, are you? I said, no, I want to watch what you do. And he would go in there and he wouldn't say anything. He would just ask questions. All he did was ask questions. He would almost always kind of pace the conversation so the customer understood where everything was. He would go in there and say, we are a health insurance supplemental company. You work for a union. Your union gives you health insurance. We're going to sell you health insurance if you want to buy it that will supplement what you have. Do you understand that? Oh yeah, I understand that. Then he would say, what is the biggest problem you have with your health insurance? And that's it. That's how he would start the conversation. After he would pace the situation, then he would say, what's the biggest problem you have with your health insurance? And they would come up with all kinds of answers. And he would just listen to them talk. He would just ask follow-up questions, ask more follow-up questions. And they would talk for 20 or 30 minutes. And while they were talking, he was just relaxed, not trying to be charismatic, not trying to be somebody he wasn't, but he was paying attention to what they were saying. And after they talked for 20 or 30 minutes, he would look inside this conversation, metaphorically, and pick out the words and phrases that were the most important to the person that was talking, and he could tell that based on how they said them. He would just keep track in his mind because he wasn't using his brain to force charisma on anybody. He wasn't using his brain to run any kind of sales game on anybody. He was using his brain to just pay attention to what they were saying. And he would notice several key words and phrases that they said with extra energy, which indicated to him that they were important to him. Then he would describe the policy, the health insurance policy, in terms of what they said, so it would seem like a perfect match. And he made a ton of money doing this. He was a very young guy, didn't have any experience in sales. He came straight from Japan as an English teacher. He was an American, but he went there to teach English. And when he came back, he got hired at this insurance company, and he sold stuff like crazy. And he wore a lot of very, very expensive clothing. I'm pretty sure he was wearing a Rolex when I saw him a couple of times. And this guy was just super laid back. Ask questions. Don't use your brain power to force yourself on anybody. Just use your brain power to ask questions. What's the biggest problem you have with XYZ product? And just let them talk. Use your brain to listen to them talk. Pick out the words and phrases that match your product. Show how it's a perfect match and make a ton of money in sales. That's what he did, and that's how he said is the easiest way to make a lot of money in sales. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.